At True Echo, we don't just tell stories, we reveal the moments that shake a town, test a soul, and change a nation. What you're about to hear isn't just about justice, it's about legacy. Walter Jennings always sat on the same wooden bench outside Cora's diner every Saturday at noon. Rain or shine, it didn't matter. He wore his tan windbreaker, army cap, and the same calm expression that had earned him quiet respect in the small town of Somerville, Georgia. Folks who knew him, really knew him, understood not to disturb his ritual. That bench was more than wood and nails. It was his piece, his post. He'd earned it through 2 wars, more scars than he'd admit, and 85 years of showing up when it counted. Most people didn't know Walter's full story. He'd fought in Korea, taken shrapnel in Vietnam, and returned home not to parades but to segregated sidewalks and slurs muttered behind gas station counters. Through it all, Walter never stopped walking, 1 mile every morning, cane in hand, never bitter, never loud. He didn't need to talk about what he'd done. His silence said it all. That's why what happened next shocked the town into stillness. They roared up just after noon. A dozen or so bikers, loud engines, boots stomping, Confederate patches flashing across sun-baked leather. They didn't go inside like usual. This time, they stopped when they saw Walter. Maybe they saw a fragile old man alone. Maybe they thought no one would care. The leader was a barrel-chested man with a buzz cut, tattoos creeping up his neck, and a smirk that never quite reached his eyes. His vest read, "Briggs." He stepped forward, kicking dust with every stride. Walter didn't flinch. He took a sip of his coffee, placed it gently beside him, and looked up just as Briggs sneered. "Look at this old relic," Briggs barked. "Ain't you out past your prime, Grandpa?" Walter turned his head, calm as ever. "You got a problem, son. That should have been the end." But ego is a fragile thing, and Briggs had more rage than wisdom. He laughed, loud and sharp. "What's a black vet like you doing talking up space where real men eat?" Still, Walter didn't rise. His voice never changed. "I fought for this country. Long before you figured out how to ride a bike." Briggs' grin faded. "Fought for it, huh? And what did you get? A paper cup and a park bench?" Walter stood, slow and steady. "I got enough. Now get gone." It was the kind of moment where everyone held their breath. No one expected Briggs to swing. But he did. Fast. Mean. One punch, right across Walter's jaw. Walter fell. His cane clattered to the ground. His head struck the curb with a sickening crack. Gasps. Screams. But no one moved. Blood began to seep from beneath his left ear. Briggs stood over him, chest heaving, looking around like he expected applause. But silence greeted him. Across the street, a black SUV pulled in. Tinted windows. Military plates. The kind of vehicle you notice but don't question. The door opened. Out stepped Major Travis Jennings, Walter's son. Special Forces. Commander. 6'1" of tightly coiled discipline. He didn't shout. Didn't run. He walked, slow, precise, like a man who'd seen battlefields and knew how to defuse a bomb with just a breath. He knelt by his father. "Dad," he said, voice cracking. "It's me." Walter's eyes barely opened. His lips moved. "You came." "I always will," Travis said. And that was the moment everything changed. Briggs, still puffed up with arrogance, glanced at Travis and scoffed. "What, your boy here to pick you up, old man?" But Travis didn't answer. Not right away. He studied his father, the swelling, the blood, the trembling hand reaching for a cane that lay just out of reach. Then, slowly, Travis stood. He turned to Briggs, not with fury, but with a levelness that unnerved everyone watching. "Did you hit him?" Briggs sneered. He mouthed off. I reminded him who's in charge. You touch him again, Travis said, his voice like gravel, and you won't get a second reminder. That's when the second SUV rolled in. This one quieter, more deliberate. Black, unmarked. Doors opened in perfect sync. 4 men stepped out, soldiers. Not in full combat gear, but close. Earpieces. Tactical vests. Stances that said, "We don't need weapons to end this." The shortest, Staff Sergeant Nolan, scanned the scene and asked, "Major?" Travis nodded. "Secure the perimeter." And they moved, precise, rehearsed, deliberate. One posted at the diner's entrance. Another by the alley. A third near the gas station. The last, by the street. No one touched a weapon. They didn't need to. The town held its breath. Cora peeked through the blinds again. At the gas station, a clerk stopped scanning items. Cars slowed at the corner, not for traffic, but curiosity. Even the wind seemed to still. Briggs tried to bark back. "You think you can sick your little army on me?" Travis took a step forward. "You put your hands on my father. That's not just personal, it's generational." The words hung heavy. One of Briggs' younger crew members took a step back. "You don't scare me," Briggs muttered. "You're already scared," Travis said. "You just don't know what to do with it." The lot was silent. A woman in scrubs stepped from the crowd, floral pattern, maybe from the urgent care down the road. She held out a first aid kit to Travis. No words. Just presence. Travis nodded his thanks and knelt beside Walter, wiping blood from his father's temple with gentle hands. Walter flinched but didn't pull away. His voice rasped, "Still hurts like hell." "You always were too tough for your own good," Travis whispered. Walter glanced toward the soldiers. "These your boys?" "They volunteered," Travis said. Walter blinked. "They came for me?" "No," Travis said, tapping his father's temple. "They came because of what you represent." That hit harder than the punch ever could. People weren't just watching now, they were absorbing. A shift had taken place. No one could pretend this was just another scuffle or boys being boys. Not when special forces moved with silent precision around a bleeding elder, not when dignity had been struck down in daylight. One of the bikers mumbled, "Briggs, maybe we should go." Briggs snapped, "Shut up." But the fear was setting in. Phones were recording. The sheriff's nephew had his out, quietly streaming from the counter. But Travis wasn't here to fight. He was here to lift his father off the ground. As Travis tended to Walter's wounds, the town around them transformed. This wasn't just a street anymore, it was a stage. And no one could look away. Walter's blood stained the pavement, a stark reminder of what silence costs. "You stood up," Travis said softly. "I didn't expect to still be fighting battles at 85, Walter replied with a dry cough. "You didn't fight," Travis said. "You stood your ground. That's different." Walter's swollen eyes drifted across the crowd, familiar faces now filled with unease. People he'd seen for decades, some who had once shaken his hand at church, others who'd simply nodded at him in passing. Today, they had stood still. Today, they had watched. He turned to his son. "I used to think, if I outlived the war zones, the dogs, the fire hoses, maybe I could drink a cup of coffee in peace." Travis didn't answer right away. He watched a teenage girl still filming, her hands trembling, her eyes wide. She didn't speak, but the look on her face said everything. "She's scared," Walter said. "She's trying to understand," Travis replied. "She's never seen something like this. Not in person." Walter let out a long breath. "Then maybe she'll learn something the rest of us had to bleed to figure out." At that moment, the sirens approached. Not frantic, slow, controlled. The ambulance was arriving, and so was a sheriff's cruiser. Travis helped Walter sit up slowly. "You sure you're okay?" Walter chuckled, though it hurt. "I've been hit harder." "That doesn't mean you deserved it." Walter looked past him toward Briggs, who now leaned against his Harley, arms crossed but spirit sagging. "You know what really shook me," he said. "It wasn't the punch." Travis looked over, waiting. "It was the people who watched. And did nothing." Travis closed his eyes for a beat. "They froze." "They've known me for years," Walter said. "They know who I am. And they'll remember this moment for the rest of their lives," Travis said. "That's the cost now. The whole world's watching." Paramedics stepped in. "I'll go," Walter said, "but not until I say this." They paused, respectfully. Walter turned to his son. "You think I should have hit him back?" Travis hesitated. "No. Because you already hit him harder than he'll ever understand. And you didn't lift a finger." Walter smiled, not prideful, not triumphant. "Just knowing. That's your mama in you," he said. Walter rose slowly, leaning hard on his cane. His balance was shaky, but his presence was solid as stone. Blood still dried along his jaw, but he didn't wipe it. He didn't try to hide the pain. He faced Briggs, whose smirk had long since faded. A few feet away, one of the younger bikers, maybe early 20s, quietly removed his vest, folded it under his arm, and walked away. No words. No drama. Just quiet shame. Briggs saw it but said nothing. Walter's voice broke the silence. "You meant to hit me." Briggs shifted. "Yeah, I did, but—" "No, but," Walter said. "You thought you could swing at me and still walk away proud." I didn't think." "No," Walter interrupted. "You didn't. That's the problem." Cameras flashed. Phones kept rolling. The crowd wasn't just watching, they were documenting, memorializing, absorbing a moment that would echo for years. Travis stepped beside his father. Not to speak over him, not to protect him. Just to stand with him. "You want to apologize?" Travis said. "Then do it without excuses." Briggs glanced around. The soldiers still stood at their posts, calm, unmoving. The people he once cowed with volume now looked at him like a man unraveling. "I'm sorry," he muttered, barely audible. Walter narrowed his eyes. "For hitting me, or for being seen doing it?" Briggs said nothing. Walter didn't press further. He didn't need to. The weight of truth had already landed. As the paramedics gently helped Walter onto the stretcher, he turned to Travis. "You riding with me?" "I'll follow. Got a couple things to finish." Walter nodded. "Don't take too long. Your mama wouldn't like me missing lunch." Travis smiled. "We'll still get your tuna melt, Pops." The doors shut softly. The ambulance pulled away. No sirens, just the quiet hum of wheels over blacktop. Travis turned back to Briggs. "You didn't just swing at a man," he said. "You swung at a legacy." Briggs didn't respond. He didn't need to. The sheriff finally stepped forward. He looked at Travis, then at Briggs. "You pressing charges?" he asked. "I'm not the one who was hit," Travis replied. The sheriff sighed. "Let's go have a word," he said to Briggs. And Briggs followed. No handcuffs. No resistance. But his boots dragged, heavier than before. By mid-afternoon, the blood had dried to a rusty stain on the curb. Cora came out with a mop and bucket, silent as she scrubbed the sidewalk where Walter had fallen. Inside the diner, the TVs had moved from news to football, but no one was watching. Conversations were quiet. The weight of what they'd witnessed still lingered like the scent of strong coffee and regret. Travis stood at the entrance for a moment. He didn't sit. Didn't remove his vest. He just let his eyes travel over the room, faces he'd known since childhood. Some met his gaze. Others looked away. "I'm not here to give a speech," Travis began. "But I need you to understand something." The room fell still. "What happened out there today, that wasn't just about my father. It wasn't about one man throwing a punch. It was about what we let slide. About how long we keep quiet when someone crosses a line." No one interrupted. Even the back booth, usually full of retired veterans who debated the price of eggs, stayed silent. Travis continued. "You don't need a uniform to show courage. Sometimes, all it takes is standing up, even when your voice shakes." A woman near the counter nodded. She had watched everything from the gas station. The expression on her face wasn't just sadness, it was recognition. Outside, a news van pulled in. A small local station. The reporter approached with practiced poise, cameraman in tow. Travis stepped outside before they could enter. "We're not doing this for show," he told her. "But if you want to report something, talk about the man who got knocked down, and still stood taller than anyone else on that street." She blinked. "And you are?" "Major Travis Jennings." His son. That name stuck. It would be in headlines by morning. Inside the hospital, Walter lay quietly under warm lights. The room was small but clean. A nurse had cleaned his cuts and applied a fresh bandage. He'd need a few stitches. Maybe a night for observation. But the bruises? Those were already teaching a lesson. Travis entered, carrying a brown paper bag. "Told you I'd get your tuna melt." Walter cracked a smile. "Even cold, it'll hit the spot." Travis sat beside him. "Town's quiet," he said. "Too quiet." "Quiet's not always good," Walter said. "Quiet means thinking." "You think they're thinking the right things?" Walter didn't answer right away. Then, finally, "Maybe." Walter chewed in silence, slow and thoughtful. He looked out the window, watching as dusk settled over the pine trees. The shadows grew longer, softer, like the weight of memory pressing gently against his chest. "Think anyone will actually change?" he asked. Travis thought of Briggs. Of the crowd. Of the young man who took off his vest and walked away without a word. "Yeah," he said. "A few. And that's where it starts." Walter nodded. "That's all we've ever asked for, isn't it?" The next morning, Somerville looked the same: rusted pickups, quiet churches, old men on porches reading yesterday's paper. But under that stillness, something had shifted. At 9:03 a.m., Walter Jennings was back on his bench. Stitched lip. Bruised cheek. Same windbreaker. Same army cap. Coffee in hand. No words. No spotlight. Just presence. A little boy walking with his mother stopped to stare. Walter gave him a nod. The boy hesitated, then raised a small hand. "Thank you for serving," he said. Walter nodded again. "You're welcome, young man." Across the street, Travis leaned on the hardware store's brick wall, watching. He hadn't planned to come back that morning. But something about seeing his father there, same bench, same strength, made the choice for him. He crossed the street. "You didn't have to come," Walter said. "Didn't feel right being anywhere else." They sat together. No words for a while. Just the fall breeze rustling brittle leaves across the sidewalk. Walter sipped. "You know what I kept thinking about last night?" "What's that?" "The line." Travis looked over. "Which one?" "The one that man crossed. The invisible one. It's not drawn with chalk. It's drawn in how you treat people. How you see them. Whether you look at someone and see worth, or just something in your way." Travis exhaled slowly. "I've spent years teaching soldiers how to fight," he said. But lately I think maybe the real strength isn't in what we fight, it's what we protect. Walter smiled. Your mother would have liked that. They shared a quiet laugh. The kind that only comes after everything has been tested and survived. A sheriff's cruiser pulled up. Sheriff Langley stepped out, hat in hand, no swagger. Morning, Walter. Major. Walter nodded slightly, coffee raised like a salute. Langley cleared his throat. Just came from Briggs's house. He's agreed to a public apology. Town Square. 3 days from now. Voluntary? Walter asked. Langley nodded. Didn't take much convincing. Think he saw himself on those videos. Didn't like the man staring back. Walter took a sip. People change when they're embarrassed. Doesn't mean they grow. True, Langley said. But it's a start. As the sheriff left, Walter looked around. A bouquet of wildflowers lay on the bench beside him. No note. No ribbon. Just respect. You know what hurts the most, he said softly. What's that? How long I sat here thinking maybe this town had changed enough, that I didn't have to be on guard. Travis didn't speak. He didn't need to. Maybe it hasn't, Walter continued. But maybe now it will. Walter tapped his cane gently against the pavement. A rhythm not of impatience, but of survival. Of memory. He looked at his son, the soldier, the man he raised to be more than just strong. Let's hold the town to that, he said. Let's hold ourselves to that. Travis nodded. We will. 3 days later, the town square was full. Not packed like a parade, but enough to feel the weight of eyes, of curiosity, of overdue accountability. Briggs stood on the makeshift platform in front of the courthouse. No vest. No glasses to hide behind. Just a man stripped of swagger. He cleared his throat and read from a paper that shook slightly in his hand. I hit a man who didn't threaten me. Who didn't disrespect me. And that says more about me than him. He looked at Walter. I'm sorry. For the hit. For what it meant. For what it said about who I was. Walter didn't clap. He didn't nod. He simply listened, and then stood. His cane echoed on the wood as he stepped up. I don't need your apology, he said. But the town did. Now make sure it means something. Briggs looked down, ashamed, not just of what he did, but of how easy it had been to do it. Walter turned to the crowd. You all saw what happened. You can't unsee it. So now the question's simple, what kind of town are we? No one cheered. But no one looked away, either. Later that evening, Walter sat on his bench again, coffee steaming in the cool dusk air. Travis sat beside him, coat collar flipped against the wind. Still feel like fighting? Travis asked. No, Walter said. Just feel like living. And that's what he did. Day by day. Cup by cup. Bench by bench. He became more than a symbol, he became a challenge. A reminder of what it meant to endure, to rise, to answer hate not with violence but with undeniable presence. And the town of Somerville? It remembered. It remembered the punch. It remembered the silence. It remembered the man who stood back up without ever raising a fist. Some lines, once crossed, force you to choose who you truly are. This wasn't just a story about an assault. It was about legacy. About dignity. About a father's strength, and a son's silent command that changed everything. As Walter said, dignity doesn't die when your body hits the ground, it dies when you stay there. But he didn't stay there. And neither should we. If this story moved you, if it made you think, or reminded you what quiet courage really looks like, share it. Talk about it. Let someone else feel what you just felt. Subscribe to True Echo for more real, raw stories that don't just fill time, they say something worth remembering.